Salt of the Earth Farm Stories is proudly brought to you by Trigg Media. Step into the world of farmers from diverse backgrounds across Australia. Through intimate interviews, host Darren Trigg delves into farming practices, traditions, and the challenges farmers face in nurturing the land.
Today, we follow the journey of a country girl who decides to drop out of uni to chase her dream of working on remote outback stations in Australia. Join us as we explore her challenges, triumphs, and the incredible experiences she encounters along the way. Get ready to be inspired by her fearless pursuit of adventure. And just to be clear, I've known her all her life and are best mates with her dad. Good afternoon, Ali.
Hello.
I've managed to catch up with you at Bungaree while you have popped down to your sister's 21st birthday.
Yep.
So you grew up on a family farm at Bungaree. What was that like?
It was great. I loved living out of town. I never really liked being and living in town. So coming home after school and being out at Bungaree was great because it was just outdoors and it was on the farm, and yeah, it was enjoyable. Definitely a good upbringing. Yeah, great family place where we all lived and grew up together. So yeah.
And it's a little bit cold.
Yes, freezing. Freezing place, always raining, or even in the springtime, like now when it's supposed to be spring and sunny, it's still cold and windy and wet, so yeah. Today
you've just come back from the Territory for a quick visit. How's the adjustment?
Oh, I hate it. I hate the cold. I got on the plane in Darwin and it was 38 degrees, and when I stepped off it was 8, so it's a big change, big adjustment. I don't think I'll ever get used to the cold again since being in the warm.
Your family always loved holidaying in the northern states.
Yes. I think that's probably why I don't like the cold, is because whenever it was the coldest time, we would always disappear to the beach and go somewhere warm. And even Mum always calls us the snobby kids are not used to the cold water anymore, because we'd always head up to Noosa where it was nice and warm, and I don't think I could get back in the Torquay beach or the Geelong beach now where it's freezing, but yeah, so...
I've always known you to have a love and a decent love and respect for animals. And I remember you at my place actually one day. You were coming up to visit in Wodonga, just out of Wodonga, and you wanted to have a look in these nest boxes. And in true Ali form, you climbed quietly up the ladder, lifted the lid, and 3 squirrel gliders come past the edge and just brushed you on the face. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. You had them all in the trees, and yeah, I remember going down there, and even the big dam out the back with all of the ducks and everything on it as well. I remember that. And yeah, I always just loved animals. Like, I think that's probably growing up on the farm and being outside. Like, I'd always disappear after school and walk down to the creek and find a rabbit or something to go and find, and take the dogs with me and go for walks. And yeah, I remember being little and catching lizards and frogs and anything I could find. And Mum always hated the snakes and the lizards that I'd find and bring home, and she was always like, they're never allowed inside, and I'd keep them in a box outside and feed them or something like that. But no, I think I always thought I would do something with animals growing up, whether it was big or small, or just being outside and being in the environment and with the animals was always great. So yeah.
You love the outdoors, and football was quite big for you for a while, wasn't it?
We're a very sporty family. Mum and Dad always had us at sports on the weekends, and I've given it everything a go, pretty much, from athletics to running and cross country and footy, rowing, yeah, netball at the local club. But I fell into footy and loved playing in a team and being with other girls. And I think growing up with Huey, my brother, and Dad was always big in footy, and I would always be outside kicking the footy with them. And I think, yeah, it just fell in, and I was able to use my speed in running and also be out tackling. And yeah, I'd always loved footy, yeah, and still do.
And when you were living here near Ballarat, you were in the rep side?
Yeah, I was in the Rebels rep side, which was a part of the NAB League at the time when I was playing. Yeah, I kind of fell into it. I was playing in school, and then it was a big thing for girls and getting into footy when I was growing up. Like, when I was younger, like, there wasn't a lot of girls playing footy, but then I think when it was in year 9 or 10, they were trying to really push it, and I knew there was a couple of girls my age, and we all just kind of gave it a go. And yeah, the rep side came along, and I tried out and got in, and I think I was in it for about 4 or 5 years playing in the Rebels rep squad. I never really thought it would take me anywhere, but it ended up being so many great opportunities. I went down to Geelong and did a little bit with the VFL down in Geelong. And yeah, I just stuck onto it, and I hated playing in the cold, but like it was great to play footy with other people that enjoyed playing footy, and to see it grow now. From when I was younger, there wasn't a lot of it, but now they've got girls playing Auskick and girls like all the way through school and playing in the rep squads and stuff like that. I think it's really great. And most of the local teams here do have a girls team playing footy as well, which is good. Like there wasn't much of that option when I was growing up, but now your North Ballarats and you have all got a girls side as well, which is pretty cool. And the skill is getting so much better.
Isn't it? What was your favourite position?
I was always a midfielder. I always loved running. Mum and Dad had us in athletics when I was growing up, and I was always had the speed, so being able to get the ball and just take off on the wing was always a good thing for me. I just loved that feeling of just running away from someone and not being able to catch me. But yeah, so I think the wing, and also I try and get up forward a little bit, but I also love defending too. They just put me anywhere and I just adjust to it and play, so yeah.
So then you went to Queensland and studied marine biology for a short time?
Yeah, so after school, it was during COVID, my year 12 year during COVID, I hated it. Like just the being at home, stuck inside on my computer, I just couldn't do it. And I always thought, like coming back to the animals, I always thought veterinary would be a path for me because I always enjoyed the animals and that kind of thing. But obviously didn't get the score required for to go straight into veterinary after school. So I did a gap year at my high school and worked in the sports department there as a trainee because we couldn't travel over borders because of COVID. And so I stayed there and did a bit of exploring about what I thought I could do, and I found that JCU, James Cook University in Townsville, did a pathway where you could study marine biology for a couple of years and then move across into veterinary. So I thought I would give that a go. So yeah, in 2022, I packed up my bags and headed up to Townsville, drove my car up there with Dad, and we headed up there, and I loved Townsville. It was great. Met so many people, lived in college there, which was pretty good coming out of COVID and not seeing anyone, and then going into like a college environment with all these different people from different places was great. And I think that's where my confidence started, in meeting new people and building connections and being able to live away from home, away from family. Like that's kind of where that started. But then quickly realised that the university wasn't for me, and kind of I think it stems back from my COVID year. I just couldn't sit still in front of a computer. I couldn't concentrate. I struggled with teachers telling me to do one thing and seeing the bigger picture and seeing why I was sitting in front of a computer all day learning about something that had no relevance to what I was actually trying to do. And it just got me, I was just really frustrated, and I kind of just moved away from the study, and I got about 6 months in, so I finished my first semester and kind of came home and said to Mum, I can't do this, it's not working for me, I need to find something else to do. And that's when the whole territory and starting to work on stations started. So yeah, that was just found an advertisement, and I remember at the time my parents were living in Noosa with my 2 younger siblings, and I flew to them and I just said to Mum, I think I need to find something else to do. And we just jumped online, and she said, what about stations? And I always thought that could be a pathway in the future, was working on cattle stations. Just growing up with the farm, cattle was easy to me, working around cattle was easy. Yeah, just saw this advertisement online for a family in the Northern Territory looking for a govey and / station hand. So worked with the kids but also worked on the cattle station, and they were looking for someone, and within a week of dropping out of uni, I was back in the car and up in Townsville with Dad, and Dad and I drove from Townsville to Northern Territory within a week.
In your little car?
In my little Subaru, yeah. In my tiny little Subaru. I remember Dad and I driving across, and Dad was talking to me about the car and about the drive and being safe and all that kind of stuff. And I remember getting to the station and Dad giving me a rundown about 5 minutes before he left about how to change a tyre on a car. And I remember him sitting there and I was like just unpacking and Dad's like, oh, do you know how to change a tyre on the car? And I was like, yeah, I do. And he's like, oh, I'll just show you anyway. And I remember him getting down on the ground going, now if this happens, you got to do this. And if this happens, you got to do this. And I was like, righto. And then he just got in the car and left. And that was like his last thing before they dropped me off. So
did he have a fishing rod with him on that trip?
No, he didn't. But it was, and even to this day, like when Dad says, when I talk about stations, Dad's like, oh, has it got a good fishing spot that you can take me to? Or is there pigs there that we can come and find? And so, yeah, that's always Dad's one request, that I find somewhere with a good fishing spot that he can come and go fishing. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So this is at Litchfield. You went to Litchfield, and what was the name of that station?
First station was Old Cameron Downs Station, which is just outside of Bachelor, which is near Litchfield, so the national park in Northern Territory. It was a family business, 3 kids under the age of 5. So it was a 5-year-old girl, 3-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl. So the 5-year-old would go to school in Adelaide River. There was a little primary school there. So Mum would take her to primary school, which was about an hour and a half round trip every morning and every afternoon.
Really?
Yeah, and so during that time I would look after the other 2, so get them up and get them breakfast and get them dressed and then play with them outside until Mum came home. And then when Mum came home, I would then go out into the cattle yards with Dad and we'd work, we'd muster and we'd do all the little cattle things, but they had an on-farm butcher.
That's what I was going to ask about, because, and talking about fishing, I called in to see you there a few years ago.
Yes.
With your dad and 2 other wild Bungaree boys,
yes.
namely Julian and Pete. And you gave us a great education on the processing of meat.
Yes.
They are big on paddock to plate, is that right?
Yeah, everything. So Fiona, she is awesome in the way that she processes, like they process their own meat on farm. So everything that goes through their butcher house and is packaged and sold to coffee shops, cafes, pubs, restaurants, it's all on farm. So it starts from a calf, grows up, eats everything there, is killed humanely and in a way that's supervised throughout the whole thing and then packaged and sent off. So there's no trucking of animals, there's no stress on the animal. It literally is brought from the paddock on the day that it's killed and killed that day, and it wouldn't know anything else that's going on. And they don't go to like a foreign environment, like a slaughterhouse or anything like that. It's all done there on farm.
It was a pretty professional setup they had in that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, because obviously when we were growing up, we had the pigs and we had the cows. So I had been down to Melbourne where we processed our pigs and stuff like that. And to see this little mini scale butcher house where everything was so white and polished and clean and tidy, and then you walk outside and you're in the middle of the bush, like it was crazy to see. But she ran it so well, so professionally done, that she had so many people look up to how they did it, and she did a really good job of it. And she still does it now, but they do it a little bit different. They don't package like the cuts, so they don't sell by cuts, they sell by quarters and they like a whole animal. So that's kind of adds into the less waste that you get, because when they purchase the flank or whatever, all of the cuts come from that one piece of meat and there's nothing left to waste. So, but yeah, the way that she looks after her pastures and her paddocks, because obviously the environment up there is quite unpredictable and harsh. Like there's only a wet and a dry season. There's no summer, autumn, winter, spring. Like it's so dry throughout the year, and then you'll get all this rain around Christmas time. So the way that she farms her paddocks and uses all the natural grasses and the way of like the rivers and the creeks, and she kind of farms and not overstocks her paddocks so that they can survive the long season of dry. So yeah, I think she does a pretty cool job at what she does. And I loved the family. The kids were amazing. I still try and keep in contact with them when I can, but I think I was able to learn so much from there, and then from there I was able to apply for these other stations that I work at now. So
they had a great respect for Indigenous culture too, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So they had Indigenous culture within their family. Their nan, who was an Indigenous lady herself, lived at the house with them, And just the way that they farmed and the way that they looked after the environment and the land that they were on and took respect to that land, I think was good.
What a great way to start your outback farming career.
Yes, yeah, no, it was great. I wouldn't have thought of any other way to do it. And I think being able to work with the family on a small scale, like it was just myself there. I was the only one there. And so I was able to learn so much one-on-one with them, not just the cattle side, but also working with the kids and building the respect from the family to be trusted in looking after their kids, I think was good. And that's also kind of where my other passion of the kids comes into it as well. After working there for 6 months, I thought that I would give primary teaching a go. And that's how I ended up in Darwin last year. I was working in Darwin at a primary school for OSH. So it's like out of school hours care. So I'd work in the mornings and the afternoons looking after the kids. But during the middle of the day, I was studying primary teaching online. I thought that giving university another go in a field that I was a little bit more passionate now after working with the kids on the station, I thought maybe I could give uni a go, because I think in the back of my mind, I was always like, I need to have a degree. I need to have something to fall back on because I can't do stations forever. And that was my thought process at the time. And also the push from mum to have the degree in saying that girls need to have a degree, something to work back on. You can't always just rely on your partners all the time. And so that was kind of my thinking of going back to uni, but then kind of figured out again that uni just wasn't it. No. So it didn't last long again. But I think in the back of my mind, I always think if I don't give it a go, I'm never going to know if I do like it or not. And I think that's my thought process in a lot of things that I do, is that I don't want to look back and go, what if I didn't do it? So, and I always live by a quote that what if it could turn out better than you ever imagined it to do? So I always just think that if I say no and then 2 years down the track, I'm like, but what if I gave it a go? Where could I have been and what could I have done? And I think that was the whole thing about moving to the Territory. When I was sitting with mum on the couch with this offer to come and work for Fiona and Pete, it was, what if I say no? And I look back and I go, I wish I had done it. And yeah, turned out to be, mum was just like, just give it a go, like only give it 6 months. It can just be another gap year and reassess.
Ali, I think you are getting the best life education right now. Your last 3 years has just been fascinating. Yeah. So you're in Darwin for a little while. Yeah. And then you went further south to another station?
Yeah, so this year I went down to Alice Springs and worked in a station down there. I kind of wanted to broaden my skills and improve, and I found a corporate company that was a big scale from where I was used to. And we had just over 25,000 head of cattle on the
Brahmins
station.
Or what?
They were a Centerpole Drought Master cross, and they were going along the lines of the Black Angus as well, because the black cattle always sell better than coloured cattle. So that they were a bit of a mixed breed between that. But they were an organic company, so they had no ticks or anything like that they had to worry about. Like, it was a really clean environment, and the way that they farmed was really cool. How they had the animals that came through were probably the best that I've seen, in the way that they looked, and also their temperament. Like, they were so calm and quiet, and for cattle that are on 1.8 million acres and hardly see people, for them to be able to walk, we could walk them for Ks in a straight line and they would not even budge or move out or try and run away. Like, it was, even in the yards, like they were not aggressive. Like, you'd get the one or two, but out of a couple of thousand, there might be one or two that would try and have a go at you.
What's the secret there?
Well, we trained, so we call it weaner education. So as soon as they're weaned off their mothers, they're always around motorbikes, they're always around horses. We walked them.
Dogs too?
No dogs.
No dogs.
No, so just horses and motorbikes. But we would wean them off their mums. They would be processed at the yards at home, and then we would walk them nearly every day. We would have a motorbike or a horse in front and a motorbike or a horse behind, and we would just walk them and pull them up at certain stages and just drive the motorbikes around them. So they got used to us and people. And yeah.
And was there a hierarchy in the mob?
Yeah, you'd always get the lead cattle. You'd have, we call them a good leader cow. Like they know where they want to go, they walk where they want to go, and everything else kind of follows them. Because cattle are like, they're a herd animal. They want something to follow. They're like sheep. So if you've got something going in the right direction, then the rest of them will follow along after that. So you like those lead cows because they kind of boss everyone else around and tell them where to go. But I think the way that they farmed and the way that they handled their cattle, in the end, when you got that end product of meat, the quality was so much better because they're not stressed, they're not angry, they're just living their life until they don't. And then that kind of comes across in their meat as well, because you don't want something that's angry and cranky, because then the meat's tough. Like everything that happens to that cow throughout its life affects that end thing. So yeah.
So being so remote, is it easier to become organic out there? I
think so, yeah, because you're not coming in contact with other cattle that often, and there's also, it's not overstocked, so there's no, if something is sick or injured, it kind of goes off and does its own thing. But if you've got so many cattle in the one spot, they kind of mix, and that's when you get like your illnesses and your diseases and stuff cross. But the quality of the feed and the quality of the soil allowed so much feed and growth that the cows could be spread out, because there was so much feed everywhere, so they're not all in the one spot all the time, and therefore not damaging that paddock by just trotting on it all the time. They're so spread out. So that acreage really helps. And it wasn't overstocked. Like you could put so much more cattle on there if you wanted to, but water is the biggest thing. Obviously, right. Alice Springs is the desert, so there's not much rain. So water is a big problem for them, especially coming into this hotter months now, where it's like 45 degrees and there's no rivers or lakes or anything like that. It's all man-made bores and water that's under the ground, but the water that's in the ground is all they've got. They can't get more water. So
on that sort of country out there, is there much ground cover? Grasses? Grasses,
yeah, there is a fair bit. The main grass there is the buffel grass, which is quite thick and lush.
Native, is it? Or
native, yeah. Oh. So it's grass that grows everywhere. Like it's, and we also get the spinifex, which is, that's horrible when you're on a motorbike because you get stuck and it spikes your legs, and you're in the shower at the end of the night or at the end of the bed just plicking out thorns from your legs. So they seem to eat that as well, and they're tough with what they eat. They're not fussy, they get what they get and they kind of make the most of it. But with the organic, like we're not feeding them lick box, we're not giving them extra nutrients like copper and zinc and anything like that. Like they're all getting everything they need from the environment that they're in. So.
And what were you doing there?
I was a station hand. So I kind of think of it as the movie like A Bug's Life. We were the ants and they were the big grasshoppers, and they kind of just told us what to do and we just did it for them. So I was, the station hand, which comes under, it's not just working with cattle, like you're working with machinery, you're fixing fences, water, like bore running, gardening, like maintenance, just anything that involves the station and what needs to be done there. So that was kind of my role. And there was a lot of us there because it was a massive corporate company. There was probably, I think there was 12 of us on the station, including like ball runners and girlfriends of partners, and also, but the stock camp itself, so all of the station hands, there was 9 of us there.
Right, just going back a sec then, what's a ball runner?
So someone that looks after the troughs and the tanks and makes sure that all the water's going to the cattle and there's no leaks or breaks or anything like that. But to think of it as 1.8 million acres, there's a lot of troughs and a lot of dams that these people need to fix. So they have a run that they do on different days. So they might go check this paddock and this paddock on this day. And then by the end of the week, they go back and start again and do it all again and just make sure that everything's working, because without water, your cattle die. So it's really important,
How far can they walk away from water?
Oh, I'm not too sure off the top of my head, but I think they drink it a lot. Like they could drink a lot of water.
I did hear up around Burke they were going about 1.5 k's out.
Yep.
But in that bigger farm, like That's a lot of water points to have.
It is. And we were able to turn off certain water points. So say we were mustering a paddock and we knew that we were mustering it in a week's time, we were able to turn off certain water points so that then those cattle would go and drink water from a certain point.
Yeah.
That we were able to find them easily, because when you got big paddocks like that, it takes up a lot of time to be able to find all these animals. By helicopter, they use helicopters, mostly 2 at a time, depending on the size of the paddock.
What size is the paddock roughly?
Oh, there'd be paddocks where it was 93 kilometres squared,
Serious?
yeah. And that's average size, but you got paddocks with thousands of acres in paddocks, yeah. And it's not just flat terrain, you got mountains. Alice was very hilly, it had the ranges go through it. Amazing place to work, so pretty in the way that the rock faces and the cliffs, the red rock. I love the colour red, and I think that's why I just love the territory red that you get. You'd get these cattle that were mountain goats that would be sitting up on the side of the mountain, and you're looking up going, I can't get up there with my 2-wheel motorbike. And that's when you need your chopper to push them down. And even when we walked the animals, so once we got our animals all together, we would have to walk them to the nearest yards, which could be anywhere between 10 and 12 kilometres to walk.
And how long would that take?
It would take us all day. We'd start in the morning at light, which is about 6 a.m. We would start mustering, and you wouldn't be getting them into the yards until 6 p.m. at night. You're walking them the whole way at their pace as well, which is not very fast. So. And
would you get back to the quarters of the night time?
Yeah, so we'd get back, it was difficult in that, long days. We'd be up in the morning at around, if we're having a muster day, we'd be up and ready to go at 4:30 in the morning to get everything there. And then we would drive the horses out and the motorbikes out to a certain spot in a paddock. And then we wouldn't be getting back, because to get to different paddocks could be an hour or 2 hour drive just to get there. Still on the property, which is crazy, because in Victoria you can drive 2 hours and you're nearly at a whole different town. But up there we could drive 2.5 hours to just get to a paddock that we needed to muster. Yeah, that would take a while in itself, and then to drive back at the end of the day, we'd be rolling in 8:30, 9 o'clock at night to roll into bed. And that's after dinner and having a wash and all that kind of stuff. And by the time you hit your pillow, you're out, and the alarm was ringing again the next morning to get up and do it again. So yeah, but that's what I like. I love the station stuff, because the fact that every day is something different. You can have a plan, but you never really know how that plan's going to go.
That's farming, isn't it?
So I think that's why I never really fit in the university classroom environment, because I was sitting in my chair just going, what am I doing? And so being able to be up and working every day outside is what I love about the station. So
a little bit different to the 20-acre spud paddock we're looking at the moment.
Yes, yep. And whenever I say to people oh, how big is it? And I'm well, it's nearly about the distance if you want to drive into town. That's probably half of it. So yeah.
Were they big on meetings with so many people?
Yeah, we used to have every morning, not every morning, but every Monday morning we'd have something called PEP. Everyone would sit down at a table at breakfast time, and they'd go over what worked well for the week before, what to expect this week, what can we do better, kind of thing. They were massive on safety.
So a big difference in landscape from the Litchfield station?
Yeah, heaps. Litchfield was, obviously you've got your wet and your dry season, you've got your build up where it's so humid. The environment kind of represented that, you'd have your jungle kind of feeling about it, because there was just thick trees and canopy and all that kind of stuff with the tropics. But whereas in Alice, you'd still get the cold. So it would still be freezing cold in the mornings, and -4 degrees we were getting up, and it was ice everywhere. So a lot flatter and not as much growth in trees and stuff like that, a bit more grasslands. And when it was cold, the frost, you could see the frost in the paddocks, but you would never get that up in Litchfield. It was just so much more tropical, more big green grasses and rivers and heaps, especially in the wet season, the rivers and the flooding that would be caused by that. But yeah.
And cold nights?
Freezing in
we
Alice.
imagine it to be quite warm all the
time. I know,
but...
and I didn't Dad will say the same thing, but I remember sitting in Alice when we got to Alice, and we got out of the car and it was like 12 degrees, and I've been used to like at least it would only be about 25, and that would be cold and so I remember getting out of the car and looking at Dad and going, it's a bit cold here. And Dad goes, what did you expect? And I was like, a bit warmer because we're still in the Northern Territory.
That's right. That's what we all think.
Yeah, but it is cold. Like we were getting up in the mornings to negatives, and it wouldn't get any warmer until about 10 o'clock. Like you would still be cold. But then again, it was a place where we said you could have hypothermia in the morning and be sunburnt by the afternoon.
Yeah, so that's right. Actually, here's the birthday girl here. Happy birthday, Em.
Thank you.
Was there anything interesting they were doing about AI and heifers?
Yeah, well, and that was like one thing that I really enjoyed about working with them is that they did so much in the sense of breeding. I loved the breeding side of it, and they would preg test everything. So every animal that would come through would be preg tested. And I was able to give that a go a bit as well, which was pretty cool. And they'd all do it like manually by hand.
Really?
Yeah. And so which was cool because if something wasn't pregnant and was fat enough to be killed, instead of putting it out in the paddock and it just being there, they were able to make money off it by selling that animal. And they also started using the repro scan, which is kind of like an ultrasound in the sense that it's a big pole that goes in and you can see the calf on a screen.
Really?
And it's like what you see in an ultrasound, like you can see the bones and you can see the age of the calf. So when they were preg testing, they were able to go, oh, that cow's actually 4 months pregnant, maybe we'll hold on to her for a bit longer. Or, oh, it's only just pregnant by a couple of... They were able to detect up to 28 days that if it was pregnant.
Wow.
So, which was pretty cool because they were like, oh, it's only just in calf, so by the time we sell it, like it's not really going to have a calf at all, which was better than arming something and going, yeah, it's pregnant, but I kind of can't really tell how old it is because it's every cow's different.
And I guess too, like down here, we can let the bull into that paddock for a month, and we know that we're going to be calving over a month in the next 9 months.
Yeah.
Whereas up there,
the bulls run with them 24/7. So so something that is in calf in an early age could mean that it's got a really big weaner still on it because it's only just come into cycle. So being able to determine if that is a productive cow and if we keep it or not, like being able to preg test and go, oh, it looks like it might have a calf on it, but we're not too sure. And then you preg test and go, no, this thing's empty. It could have a really big weaner on it, or it could just be not a cow that has a calf. But they did that. And then to also help with, because there's a bull with them 24/7, the heifers that they wanted to sell, they would spay. So if they were selling a heifer, instead of it getting in calf and them not wanting to keep it because it's a bad breed or it doesn't really fit what they're running with, and that's why their herd was so productive, is because they got rid of everything that wasn't great. So if it had bad temperament or if it didn't quite look the part that they wanted, they were able to get rid of them and sell them.
Is that a big process?
It's a big process. Yeah, we ended up spaying, I think it was just over 500 that we ended up spaying, and it took us a week to spay that.
Right.
So the process is quite difficult because you obviously have to find the ovaries and get rid of them. But again, every cow is different. So the ovaries can be different sizes and in different spots. And you also have to be really careful because it's a really delicate procedure that you don't want to put too much stress on the animal.
Another massive experience you've had.
Pretty cool. I'd never seen it done before. I've heard of it, but never seen it done. And it was pretty cool to see how they did it.
Okay, this finishes up part A with Ali. I am really loving this chat with this inspiring young lady. Stand by for part B, published next week. In the meantime, follow us on Facebook, search Salt of the Earth Farm Stories, and keep up to date.
Salt of the Earth Farm Stories is proudly brought to you by Trigg Media.